Now, before we get to tonight's reading, we saw Downton Abbey at the grand finale and loved it. And I just want to say they call it the grand finale, and they've done, ads and interviews saying, right, well, all good things have to come to an end. We would be in line tomorrow to see the sequel of Downton Abbey with Lady Mary as the central character and her parents, Hugh Bonneville and Elizabeth McGovern, just like off in what was the Dowager's Cottage. We thought they left all kinds of possibilities open. Just saying, okay? Just saying. So I guess we have to adjust. Look, I want to read tonight from David McCullough. There's a new book, and we're going to talk to his daughter, who worked with him for years, and the great historian John Meacham this week. David McCullough, History Matters. And we're going to talk to him. He's going to be on our show. They're going to be on our show, John Meacham and David McCullough's daughter, Dory McCullough Lawson. And we want to start doing this to give you some idea of the books that we're going to be talking about and reading. And I want to read, this is a collection of speeches and appearances and interviews that the great historian, John McCullough, delivered over the years. And of course, he wrote about the Brooklyn Bridge and the Johnstown Flood and Harry Truman and John Adams, and just a great historian. And I must say, a great literary stylist. I have been going over some of his books in preparation for the interview. Not a cliche in there. It's amazing. In any event, I'm going to read from a section now, and these are remarks he gave at the National Book Festival in, I believe, 2002. National Book Festival 2002. Of course, we were just at the National Book Festival with our friend John Green. And I want to read from the section where David McCullough begins to recollect some of the books that were important to him and meant a great deal to him. David McCullough writes, "These are some of the books that have meant a great deal to me: fiction, nonfiction, biography, autobiography." By the way, I noticed some similar titles. A Death in the Family by James Agee. Of course, right over my shoulder up there. My Antonia by Willa Cather. My wife is in the middle of reading it right now, which I've read several times. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn was the first book I ever took out of the public library in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was probably about 10 years old. 2 years Before the Mast by Richard Henry Dana in a modern library edition, which probably cost about 50 cents. I purchased when I was about 12 or 14 in a bookstore in Pittsburgh. It was the first time I'd ever dared to walk into a bookstore on my own, buy a book on my own, a book of my own choice, and I still have it. It's one of my most treasured possessions. David McCullough says, I got through a job one summer working in an envelope factory because I could go home every night after work and read Irwin Shaw's The Young Lions, Fitzgerald's Tender as the Night. Also to our left here, Herman Wouk's The Caine Mutiny. I think we got to get that in here. And later on, The Winds of War. Herman Wouk is a superb writer, and if you read The Caine Mutiny, you'll remember William Keith always. Willie Keith is a real person in your life. The Winds of War, Pug Henry's story, is a story we'd all like to experience too, and he does it for us. And I think some of those historical set pieces, the descriptions of the situation of the war, of the world that Mr. Wouk writes and sets in italics every so often throughout the book, are as well written as any historic description I know. Oh, Mark Kemble. What a joke. You see what he said?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. Turgenev's Fathers and Sons. Dickens, of course, all of Dickens. Rosalie was his wife. Rosalie and I just last Christmas were in New York. We went over to the Morgan Library and we saw the original manuscript of A Christmas Carol. And if you've never gone to the Morgan Library to see that, go. It's going to send a chill right up your spine. There was a little book in Dickens' own hand. I guess if I had to pick my favorite of all Dickens, it would be Great Expectations, but it's a hard choice. Jan de Hartog, A wonderful Dutch writer who died just a few years ago wrote a book called The Captain, about a tugboat captain on the Murmansk run, which had a very deep effect on me. Then I began to read political novels, and it's remarkable how few really first-rate political novels we have in our literary body, considering how much time and money and worry we invest over it, and how much we talk about politics. They can be counted on maybe a hand and a half. Advise and Consent by Alan Drury. We have several copies over there. Henry Adams' novel, Democracy, and the one I keep thinking about again and again, and we have several copies of it over there, A Gay Place by Billy Lee Brammer. A Texit, which is to a very large degree a monologue on Lyndon Johnson. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant book. Brammer died very shortly after finishing the book. It was a great loss to American letters. If you've not read it, I strongly urge it. John Le Carré's A Small Town in Germany. Right up there. A wonderful book which has a description of the people working on the research after the war to determine which of the Germans had been Nazis, which of the German businessmen had been Nazis. And in that description, I think he describes as well as anyone ever has the pull, the excitement, the detective case excitement of historic research. You get on a track and you want to follow it. You want to follow it the whole way. Thomas Flanagan's The Tenets of Time, an American writer who wrote beautiful novels about Ireland. The Tenets of Time is one of my all-time favorites. I had 3 writers who befriended me early in life, all of whom wrote superbly and whose work I treasure. Conrad Richter, whose great trilogy, The Trees, the Fields, and the Town, were very popular years ago. He wrote The Sea of Grass. You remember it was made into a memorable film with Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. Richter talked to me, and as he talked to others, about the power of individual words, the difference between the right word and the wrong word, which Mark Twain once described as the difference between lightning and the lightning bug. Mm-hmm. Paul Horgan, beautiful, beautiful novelist, wonderful biographer. He had a biography of Archbishop Lamy of Santa Fe, one of the finest I've read. And then Thornton Wilder. Believe it or not, when David McCullough went to Yale, Thornton Wilder was at Yale. He knew Thornton Wilder. Thornton Wilder, who I was lucky enough to have at least sat beside on occasion at lunch and to have talked to several times as an undergraduate in college. Yes, when Thornton was a fellow of Davenport College at Yale, where I lived. I love mysteries, says David McCullough. I love Martha Grimes. I love Ruth Rendell. I love Ruth Rendell's distinct English depravity. And Elmore Leonard. Elmore Leonard, we have several behind us here, at his best is as good as they get. It's like watching a great tennis player. He knows how to do more on a page with a few lines, a few words than almost any writer I know. Barbara Tuchman's The Guns of August, right over there. And Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's,
I'm not here to correct.
Thank you, Wind, Sand, and Stars. I guess that I've read that book 5 times. Harry McPherson, we have the book over here, wrote a book called A Political Education, which I think is the finest book I know about the U.S. Senate, particularly in the times when Lyndon Johnson was in the Senate. It shows what extraordinary characters there were in the Senate then, but also how things work. I'm going to go ahead a little bit because something's really interesting in this these remarks. He says, he talks about how we carry quotations through our lives. John and Abigail Adams were continuously writing to each other and very often quoting favorite lines without bothering to put quotation marks around them, which is very customary as the 18th century, often because they didn't bother much with punctuation or spelling. Jefferson could spell the same word 2 or 3 different ways in the same letter, which I admire hugely. Andrew Jackson said he never had much respect for anyone with so little imagination as to be able to spell a word only one way. But they also left quotation marks off because it was a way of paying tribute to the receiver of the letter. It happens again and again. Take Abigail Adams' famous letter when John is off in Philadelphia. She reminds him that when you're working there, achieving liberty, quote, don't forget the ladies. And then she follows with the line, remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. And it's quoted again and again as Abigail Adams. It's not her line. It's a line from a poem by Daniel Defoe. When Nathan Hale, a young Nathan Hale from Connecticut, recently graduated from Yale College, was caught by the British in New York and hanged, he is famously to have said as his last words, I only regret I have but one life to lose for my country. Well, that line isn't his. It's from the play Cato, which was the most popular play of the day. But imagine you're there and you've been caught and you're going to be hanged and you're told by those British officers that you have a few minutes to compose yourself and say your last words. Who in the world could think of any last words in a situation like that? So what does he do? He quotes a kind of scripture. Yes, I want to find out about that Cleveland Playhouse production. And since it was written by Joseph Addison, who was an Englishman, the Englishmen all knew the line. So I think he was throwing it right back at them, and I think he delivered in this way. My only regret is I have but one life to lose for my country. That same kind of patriotism, that same kind of commitment to the ideals applies to my country, no less to yours. We are all very fortunate, all of us, says David McCullough, that we live at a time and in a land where there is such an abundance of choice. We have a greater choice in almost everything about life than at any other time in all of history. The variety of vocations we can choose, the television channels we can turn on or off, the number of books to read, to walk into a large present-day bookstore like Barnes & Noble, where there may be 100,000 choices, maybe more, and we get to choose all of those different voices, all of those different points of view, and we get to choose. We're going to a great library where the choice is more vast still, and we can travel around. So, David McCullough, we're going to interview his daughter and the great historian, John Meacham. That's his typewriter. He never stopped using it, and he has a paean to his typewriter in here, as a matter of fact. Let me history and
We have
yes.
a question.
Yes.
Would Scott Simon ever consider writing an autobiography?
No, nobody would find that interesting. I've written memoirs,
Right.
About my life as a sports fan.
Sure.
And adoption, although that's just a couple of chapters in there. And we have a memoir coming out that's, our family life with pets, but I think that should be fine. I've got a number of projects to do in that.
That doesn't feel like a priority.
Yeah, that doesn't feel like a priority, yeah.
And of the books we've done on Open Book, so we had a couple of requests for the list of books you just listed, which we've written down and will be included in the post for those that are asking.
Oh, thank you.
Are there particular books that you are finding yourself attached to right now?
Right now?
Right now, in this moment. I mean, that you're either reading or rereading or rereading in your mind.
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, what I'm reading now is David McCullough and History Matters, and I am reading Ian McEwan, or I have finished reading Ian McEwan because we're interviewing him this week about his next novel, which half of which is set a century from now.
Mm.
And it's a different world, although I think he suggests, and I'll ask him about this, you can see the contours developing on our own. There's been a massive flooding of the world, which was actually set off by a series of nuclear explosions and a nuclear exchange. And so Britain, which is an island, has become an archipelago.
Mm.
And the premise of the book centers around before all of that happened in 2014, there was a poem that was read by a great poet named Blundy to his wife that has set off all kinds of speculation, and a copy has never been discovered. And one of the things that I will talk to him about, and this is interesting because it's reflected in several books, we have books all over here. And I know it's possible to reduce all of them to digits, right? Yeah, but I mean,
You could, yeah, okay. There's a Dewey Decimal System for that, sure.
yeah, but well, I
Yeah.
mean, you don't need these big cumbersome things. Although I think we like them, but I mean, this goes two ways. Somebody could throw a switch and destroy all of the knowledge we have accumulated on digits,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe not even consciously. It's something that just maybe could happen.
Like that squirrel in the New York City blackout.
Yes, right. Yeah, good. Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Exactly. Now I know it's also possible, because we have, for example, we can't keep all of the books here. We have books down in a storage unit, which may have been flooded and might be, pretty useless and irrecoverable. I guess we'll find out someday. But yes, I mean, we happen to be on the 7th floor, but I happen to know that floods occur.
Does it? You don't have to be on the ground,
Right.
friend.
At least on the 6th floor.
Yeah.
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 And, so it's fragile. And, I also know that there are people that think that, why do we keep rereading the same books and classics? I think it gives us a common frame of reference. If there's one, if I might, to back into that a little bit, I have been rereading A Farewell to Arms, and so,
Huh.
but I'm looking forward to talking to Ian McEwan. I'm so glad that he is. No, David Jordan, nobody is banned from Open Book. Yes, as a Kindle person, am I banned?
We don't ban.
We don't
anything.
ban anyone on.
We only ban banning.
Right. Thank you. We ban banning a book. So thanks very much for being with us tonight. We have a guest tomorrow. Howard Husock, who's written a book about the history of public housing in America. So we're looking forward to talking to him about that. Audiobooks, yeah, I have never gotten into them, but people like audiobooks, and
it's a little funny.
Do you? No.
No, but the fact that you never really got into audiobooks
I never really
is not funny.
Well, I think that has to do with the fact that, of course, I don't drive, so I don't. Yeah. Now, Caroline and I once, I forget exactly where we were driving, but I wouldn't even know how to put on an audiobook at this point.
That's fair.
But we had, I think, a CD at that point, and remember CDs?
I do.
Maybe not. And we were listening to John le Carré read The Russia House.
Oh.
And boy, was he a great reader of his own works. And on top of everything else, I don't do particularly great impersonations, but I have one French accent. I have one Russian accent. It is like this. John le Carré. Because in The Russia House, there were, I don't know, a dozen different characters who were Russian. He had different voices for all of them. Yeah. Reason why that man was in the world of intelligence, right?
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. Yeah.
You can be whoever you want.
S.R. O'Brien says, crank up the Victrola. Well, I don't have a Victrola, all right?
Not today.
Linda Grimm says she has to drive 150 miles for groceries.
We'd starve.
150 miles for groceries?
I'd starve.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I'd learn to eat wood.
What does what does DoorDash do? So thanks very much for being with us. We will welcome Howard Husock tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.